This is one of the most beautiful and magical places, these islands at the edge of the world. And I can't wait to sail among them and see how many shades of blue and green exist. And I would like to commune with the spirits in the ancient forests and experience the vibrancy of the native heritage. I'd also really like to buy some art, which is why I've come to Haida Gwaii. On my travels through these islands, it was as if I was being welcomed to tell the story of Haida Gwaii. Everywhere I went, people told me I had good karma. Even the Haida people used that word. Eagles soared overhead. Whales came to play. And wonder of wonders, in this misty land, the sun shone every day. This is the fulfillment of a fantasy. I won't tell you what number it is, but it's certainly in the top 10. It's unbelievable. But let me tell you how I got here in the first place, and why the Haida people who inhabit these islands don't call them the Queen Charlottes anymore. Haida Gwaii is the westernmost part of Canada, an archipelago of around 150 islands off the coast of British Columbia. The Hecate Strait separates the archipelago from the mainland, where the nearest city is Prince Rupert. To the north is Alaska. To the west of the islands stretches the Pacific Ocean. When travelers dream of visiting Haida Gwaii, or the Queen Charlottes as most Canadians know them, they usually imagine the southern portion. That's the remarkable national park called Gwaii. But most of the residents live on the northern island, Graham Island, in small coastal towns such as Skidegate and Masset. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Skidegate?
I grew up in Masset and a little bit in Skidegate, and lived with my old grandmother at that time.
Oh, God, she must have been incredible.
Yeah, she was.
Gujaw's ancestors first lived here at least 9,000 years ago. He carries on their traditions as a carver, musician, and artist.
Often people look at a culture and say, the culture is the totem poles and the songs and those sorts of things, but the way we look at it, those things are a reflection of our relationship to the land, which is the culture.
Gujaw also happens to be the president of the Council of Haida Nations and one of the key figures who protected these lands from overlogging. In the process, the Haida Nation and the federal government created Gwaii National Park and Haida Heritage Site in 1993. Why has it been so important for the Haida Nation to, I guess, regain control over these islands?
The understanding in my heart given to me by my uncles and everybody else is that this is Haida land, and so there's never a question about that. Like if all the cedar was logged off, which was the intention, then, the very foundation of a culture would be gone.
Because food from the forest and the ocean was so abundant, the ancient Haida didn't have to spend all their energy hunting for food. They had leisure time to foster their artistic skills, develop their language, and build one of the most sophisticated native cultures in North America. For thousands of years, life was pretty good for the Haida people. And then another civilization discovered these islands. What do you think when people say, oh, you live in the Queen Charlotte Islands?
I tell them it's Haida Gwaii.
Who's Queen Charlotte?
Yeah, Queen Charlotte was actually the ship and it wasn't actually the queen at all. But it was a ship that came here, and it is one of the, they dropped somebody off on this island who had smallpox. And our people looked after them and caught it.
And you lost what, 80, 90%?
It went from, just people guessing, 10,000 down to 500 people.
That dark moment changed the Haida's history in an instant. Because it happened less than 150 years ago, it's still strong in the collective memory.
Yeah, I had a great-great-grandmother who ended up living to about 109, and she taped over 100 songs after she was 100 years old. And
So she must have been some character.
yeah, she actually came from Skidans to Skidegate on a canoe, and lived to the days of even having a little black and white television in her house. So she's seen the changes, and she linked us in life to them real olden days. People also look at Haida culture as being really ancient thing, but it's only a couple of generations away from today.
To discover how that culture is rebuilding itself in the 21st century, I had to travel south to the place where it thrived for thousands of years. I am now in the area known as Gwaii, which is the jewel of Haida Gwaii. Its name means the place of wonder, and it is. I will never bandy around the word pristine again after seeing these magnificent islands. And it was voted #1 by National Geographic Traveler of all the parks in North America by a wide margin. Gwaii National Park Reserve and Haida Heritage Site, it said, has a high cultural integrity, partly because of the partnership between Parks Canada and the Haida people, and because it's beautiful and intact, a great model for other regions. It is spectacular, but you can't drive your camper van in here, don't expect to. There are only 3,000 people maybe come here a year, but you have to come in either by float plane or on a boat. And if you don't know what you're doing, then you shouldn't come here. You should probably come with an operator. But boy, is it worth it. I traveled on the Island Roamer sailboat for 3 days. You need a vessel of some sort to navigate the many islands of the national park. To explore the shoreline and the forests, we took small zodiacs and kayaks. On our first night, the sailboat headed for a mooring in a quiet cove just outside the sacred Haida heritage site of Skungwaii. The next morning would bring one of the most amazing days in all my journeys. This is Skungwaii, which is also known as Ninstance. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This Haida village about 140 years ago was bustling, but it didn't survive Western contact, smallpox in particular. The people are all gone now, and just the monumental poles remain, staring out to sea. It absolutely fills your heart and fills your eyes, Haida or not. I'm really lucky to have with me in this extraordinary place a special guide, Natalie Fournier, who is Haida and with Parks Canada. What do you feel when you're here?
I feel really connected to my heritage, to my Kunisi, those who came before us. It really grounds me in what makes being Haida so significant and special for me.
Can you imagine it as a village and what it would have been like?
It would have been a very packed, solidly community that would have been filled with longhouses, would have been filled with house frontal poles, memorial poles, mortuary poles, and mandalas, and there would have been canoes in front, and there would have been children everywhere because children just had free reign.
It has the most magnificent setting, though. I mean, we're just near the Pacific at the very bottom of the archipelago, and yet it's so tucked away.
It is. It's actually a fortress in a lot of ways. There's several islets that protect the front of the village. The back of the village has this amazing canyon that provides an amazing fortification. It is actually one of the most well-protected Haida villages on the islands in terms of physical structures.
These totem poles aren't just beautiful works of art. In some cases, they were used as tombs. The bodies of ancestors were placed in bentwood boxes high up in the mortuary poles. The totems here are incredible.
They are. They really are amazing because to me, I connect to each one of these because each one of these was put up for somebody's nanai or chinai or auntie or uncle, and they were significant to a family. This had somebody who was so important to them and so beloved, and when this pole was put up, it was a way of saying, after the year of mourning was over, it was a way of saying, I love you and I'm releasing you because I care about you and I want you to go on to the spirit world. This is not just a pole, and it's not just something to look good. It's something to celebrate a life and a connection.
Mm-hmm. Now we're seeing lots of carvings here, typically ravens and eagles. The significance of those.
The raven and eagle significance is that the Haida culture is divided into two large groups, or modis, as sometimes the anthropologists like to use.
Such a weird word.
It is, and I can't explain it. So there's the eagles and the ravens, and then under those two separate groups are...
They're talking to you. You better get it right.
Under those two groups are separate and autonomous clans. So you could have like 10 or 15 raven clans and, same amount in eagle clans as well.
And you're an eagle?
I'm definitely an eagle.
I could just tell.
I think you might be a raven.
Why? Opportunistic? Scavenging?
No, because you like bright, shiny things.
I do. Human eyes also stand watch alongside the aging totems at Gwaii. Visitors mustn't disturb the sacred sites, so Haida volunteers live at them throughout the tourist season. During the 1900s, there was little respect for the people who had been buried here. The outside world believed that Haida culture was nearly extinct. Scientists came to Gwaii and removed some of the human bones, carting them off to museums. There's a quote I really liked about this place, which is, what was destroyed was one more bright tile in the complicated and wonderful mosaic of man's achievement on earth. Mankind is the loser.
We hold our ancestors' bones dear to our heart, and they're laid to rest for a reason. To have their bones removed like that, we know that there were many spirits out there that were not resting.
Nika Collison is determined to put the past to rest. She's part of a movement that has managed to force or cajole museums in Canada and the U.S. to return the remains of 466 ancestors. Some of those ancestors have recently been reburied in ceremonies here in the coastal town of Skidegate.
Bringing these ancestors home represents all of that our people went through, and they either died from smallpox or watched their entire family die from smallpox. They represent this part of our history that's not very long ago, and people don't understand just how short of a time frame it went from one way of life to another.
It must have been so powerful when you finally, as we see, you put them to rest here in the cemetery in Skidegate.
It was each time indescribable and very amazing, and kind of hard to really put into words Just over half of the 466 ancestors are buried in our cemetery. And you'd have to do ceremony around that and a spirit dance. But then you go, oh, look, they're home. We've really done it. We've finished it. This is our end of mourning. They can carry on now. And then there's lots of celebration. The true celebration happens, hey? So it's good. It's really good.
Is a professor of biology at Simon Fraser University, but he's the professor on board the Island Roamer, a naturalist who's taking me ashore to talk about the unique ecosystem that these islands are.
British Columbians like to refer to their province as supernatural. Does that slogan ever make sense here in Guayhanas National Park? It's as if everything was ordered up supersized.
Look at the size of this tree.
Well, how'd it get blown so far?
Well, winter storms carry them up here and put them high up on the beach.
You mean the weather's not always like this?
No, it's not always like this.
Remember, this is a temperate rainforest. It usually rains 2 out of 3 days here.
Well, I've been coming to Haida Gwaii for 8 years. I've spent a lot of time here, and I've never, ever experienced a sequence of weather like we have had on this trip.
The Haida creation story says that human life began on a beach here when Raven found a clamshell filled with tiny Haida people. And when you experience the sheer variety of plant and animal life, Haida Gwaii does feel like the Garden of Eden.
It's a fantastic place for tourists because you can't see a lot of the things that you see here in other places.
Like?
It's difficult to see so many whales so close to shore in a lot of other places. There's a fantastic abundance, particularly of seabirds. And these large kelp forests are like any other place on Earth.
With its snap, crackle, and pop, the seaweed that's washed up on shore is breakfast cereal for a host of creatures.
The fastest growing plant are these kelps that we've seen. Oh, we've seen so many. These large kelp forests that you see in these nearshore habitats all around the islands.
So bull kelp and all these other forms.
Yeah, can grow 1 meter or more per day. They're fantastic.
So as a biology professor, you just must love it here.
Yeah, it's near heaven for a biology professor.
And even the trees. I mean, you can't forget the trees.
There's no other trees like them, are there? They're just a powerful presence.
Some of the giant spruce and cedar trees in Haida Gwaii are more than 300 years old. Before the advent of clear-cut logging, trees as old as 700 years still stood in these forests. They provided the Haida people with the wood that created their canoes, homes, fishing nets, and some of their clothing. As Natalie Fournier says, that's why the Haida people have fought so hard in recent years to control the logging.
We owe what we are, in my mind, to the cedar tree. It's just an absolutely amazing symbiotic relationship. And that's why when we see the last of the big ones coming down, it tears us apart.
Tell me what's extraordinary about the ecosystem here.
Haida Gwaii is unusual because it has a variety of very different habitats. It's perched right on the edge of the continental shelf, so there's deep ocean water right there, and there's the shallow Hecate Strait here on this side, and then lots of deeply indented fjords that generate lots of energy and lots of productivity.
So the life is more abundant?
The ocean especially is very, very rich. Lots of food for lots of different creatures.
I always go whale watching on my travels across Canada, from the northern peninsula of Newfoundland to the Arctic Ocean around Nunavut. Now I find myself west of West, and I'm wondering if my good Haida karma will pay off.
Oh, hi. Hey, you.
You're not allowed to chase the whales, so we must wait patiently for them to reveal themselves.
That's cool. Look at the spray just sit in the air.
It's enormous.
Even Professor Ron is impressed by this show.
That second whale that came up is a big animal. It's big. I've never seen anything like we're seeing here. There are about a dozen fin whales here and 25 or more humpbacks. It's hard to count them though, isn't it? The fin whale is hunted to near extinction, of course, by whaling, which all ended in the 70s, and they're coming back in really unbelievable numbers.
The fin whale is the second biggest whale of all. Only the blue whale is bigger. And the humpback is just the performer, the party animal. That's the humpback there. This is just the most magnificent evening of my life. This is just pure magic. But why are there such an incredible number of whales in this one spot? It turns out the secret lies within the aqua-colored water I spied as we flew into the national park.
Well, you can see that the water is differently colored here, so there's a very large plankton bloom happening. That attracts fish, that attracts krill. It's very notable. You can see it very easily from a long ways away. And somehow whales and these other creatures are able to find that as well, and that's what they're doing here. They're chasing and feeding on all the creatures that are here, ultimately feeding on these plankton.
It's incredible. Oh my gosh! Look at them! Oh my god! We're just surrounding the boat. We can't even start it. Now, right here, Brian! This is it. Oh, look, I can see him under the water.
Call it serendipity, but nature had even more magic in store for us, even as we left the whales behind.
This is incredible. They're, just when the billions of whales took off, about 1 million Pacific white-sided dolphins appeared, and they're just playing all around this boat, and they're going along with us. You can see them right under the water there. Look at that.
Dolphins lift everybody's spirit, you know. There's probably 500 white-sided dolphins out here, spinning and jumping and chasing fish.
The captain of our boat tells me that while I slept that night, the dolphins followed us for a long time, leaving glowing trails of phosphorescence in the dark waters around Haida Gwaii. Travel doesn't get any better than this. Haida Gwaii has always drawn people with a sense of adventure and a longing for wilderness. This is Rose Harbor. Up until the 1940s, it was a whaling station where hunters processed the carcasses of those valuable behemoths. The remnants of that whaling station can still be seen scattered across the shore. But today, Rose Harbor is home to a different kind of soul. A tiny community is living off the land here, and it feels like you've returned to the 60s.
Hey, good. How are you?
Hello.
Goods, I presume.
Götz is my name.
I'm Valerie.
Hi, how are you doing?
How are you?
Great.
That was
thank you.
beautiful.
That's my own compositions, yes.
And you've made CDs?
I've made
You're
CDs.
a famous guy hiding out here in Rose Harbor.
I'm hiding out here, all right,
Who
yes.
would have known? Now, how long ago did you come here?
It's about 22 years now that I came here.
And you lived in a tent, I hear?
I lived in a tent for about 2 years, trying to figure out if this is where I wanted to spend the rest of my life. And I guess it's called magnetism. That's the forces that draw you unknowingly. Whoops, and there you are.
Now, I'm told if I keep going back up in the woods, I'll see something very cool.
A Haida canoe, have
Yeah,
you seen it?
yeah. I was going to take them. We're going to take them to find a thing. But if you play, I'll vanish off and walk away. But I just
Sure.
think it'd be nice to listen to you while I go search for this thing.
Okay,
It's so
good.
nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks. I've heard about you appearing, but didn't know I have a fire to tend over there too.
Yes. See you
I'll
good.
play some more. Yeah.
It's like the enchanted forest. Now it's supposed to be just up here, maybe around here. Here's the path. I could be in a scene from Lord of the Rings. This is really sort of hidden away. Look at this place. A bit muckier up here. Oh my God. This is what I was told about. It's an old Haida cedar canoe that someone started carving out. They think maybe about 150 years ago. It could be as old as some of the poles you see around, and it was abandoned for whatever reason and is now disintegrating into the forest. But this is a really rare example of this. And they chopped it down there and I guess would hollow it out, and then when it was lighter, carry it down to the ocean. And this cedar grove is just staggeringly. They look like ants. I think that's tree beard. I can't help wondering, if I linger for a while, will the forest take me over? People come from all around the world to kayak in these waters off Gwaii. It's cold. Hi there.
Howdy.
Where's your motor?
Right and left.
You should get yourself one of those. So you kayaked here?
We did.
What do you think of this place?
I think this is one of the temples of the planet, and for those people who want to desecrate it, they should think about doing that as they might want to do that to their own religious temples, you know, Mecca, Bodh Gaya, or the Holy Land. So this is my temple.
Yeah, it's pretty beautiful.
It's not
Well, have
bad.
fun. When do you have to go back?
About an hour.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Well, I'm going to head up to the hot springs.
Okay.
Is it nice?
It's one of the better ones on the planet.
Oh, well,
Every
thank you
mountain.
very much.
You're welcome.
I'll
Enjoy
see
your
ya.
stay. Bye-bye.
It's a very charming clamshell-lined path along here. Holy cow, look at the size of this spruce. Look at this. Goes around from here. Hold on. Wow. Anyway, it was partly the protection of huge old-growth trees like this that led to the battle for the protection of this area and the creation of Gwaii Park. Okay, so don't hate me because I have the best job in the world, but this is one of the big pleasures of Gwaii is coming to Hot Spring Island and just hanging out in the hot pools. That is, of course, if you've kayaked around, your muscles are sore. You know, the ravens were talking to me on the way up. I think they said they wanted my earrings, I'm sure of it. My glorious day wasn't over yet. There was one more adventure to be had, this time back on the island Roamer. We're actually going to try a little sailing here on the Island Roamer, which is really exciting. So my master and commander is Jacqueline Dene, who's captain in training. Is that right?
That's right.
With how many hours under your belt?
About 17 years.
Oh, that'll do. That'll do. So you tell me what rope to pull and what to do.
Okay.
And we're first going to raise the mainsail.
Yeah, we're going to raise the mainsail first.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right, now what?
We're going to raise the sail using this halyard.
Okay.
Okay, haul up the mainsail.
Haul up the mainsail. Stuck a little bit.
Okay, that's right. Looking good. Take about a foot left.
Okay. And then after this, we do the jib.
Yes. Pull with one.
Yeah, should pull with one. Tug. Oh, there it is. Okay. I say my new deck shoes are like fly paper. So we take this.
Pull that down a bit. Yep.
You want to
And
do that,
whatever
Brian?
you do, don't let it go.
I got it, Jacqueline. Don't you worry about a thing.
Okay, so now we're ready to raise the jib. Perfect. Excellent. Oh, look. You want it about guitar string tight if you play.
Okay.
How I judge it.
that look right?
That looks pretty good. Yep.
Last time I sailed, I was in a laser or something, okay? How big's this boat?
This boat is 65 feet.
65 feet. Okay, it's longer than a laser.
Yes, definitely. Probably put a few lasers on here.
An extra ration of rum for all this work I'm doing around here. I've got an easy way.
All right, done.
I think I'd be a lot more sort of nervous if the wind were high and the waves were high.
Yeah, it can get a little spooky, but we're here in protected waters, and it's a beautiful wind, about 10 to 12 knots right now.
And no rain.
No rain, yes. Yeah, I don't know about all these stories about all this rain here in the Charlottes. We're not seeing it today.
Nature is the genesis for the richly symbolic Haida art. Eagles and ravens, frogs and salmon, they glide and dance through the carvings and stories of these islands. These modern-day poles were coaxed into life by master carver Jim Hart. I met with him at his longhouse studio in the northern village of Old Masset. How are you feeling about the state of Haida culture now?
Oh, I'm really proud of it and proud of being part of it. If you start studying the art form, looking at it a lot, you start seeing that this was our written language. Mm-hmm. It's how they designed it, and it's speaking to you. It's a whole nother way of reading. It's really quite interesting.
This is so beautiful, though. Oh, it's coming together.
Yeah, thank you. And this here is a tool. One of my favorite tools is an eraser. And I say thank the Lord for erasers because I like rubbing out and changing lines, and without it, things would be a lot slower.
The most famous Haida artist was Bill Reed, who brought this magnificent art from these islands to a wider audience. And I like to think of him every time I go to the bank machine because of this. On the 20 is a reproduction of the magnificent sculpture he did for the Canadian Embassy in Washington. There's also a copy of it in the Vancouver airport, and it's called The Spirit of Haida Gwaii.
I hope that the ribbons...
Remember Nika Collison? Well, maybe one of the reasons she's so determined to restore Haida culture is because she's Bill Reed's granddaughter.
Okay, hey?
Now the ancestors are home. I mean, there are other things you want to bring home.
Oh, yes, yes.
Poles,
Poles, all
artifacts,
everything.
bentwood boxes.
Yeah, yeah. We have good people working on that. That's our culture, more than anything. And that's where all those beautiful pieces come from, are from these lands and waters. That's where all our knowledge comes from.
When the Haida people were decimated by smallpox, they also lost a big part of their cultural knowledge. So ironically, today's artists may owe some gratitude to those museum collections.
Most of our art is wood, and wood deteriorates, right? It's not like stone and stuff like this. And so if they weren't around collecting and taking care of, I think we would have lost a lot more than we have now.
the knowledge is there, and it's seeping into our younger generation. Thank goodness for our elders, though, because that's who's teaching it to us.
The Davidson family has produced several famous artists. Ben Davidson is the new kid with the knife. He can trace his carving skills back to his famous father, Robert Davidson, and his uncle, Reg.
How complicated is it, what you're doing?
It's just finicky. I'm trying to figure out what tool will fit in there.
How much patience does it take?
A lot. More than I have usually.
What do you think when you see the beautiful poles around here?
I'm amazed at how they did it with such limited tools, because I have quite a few more tools than they had, and I still find it tricky.
Why do you think the Haida art is so popular?
Just because we put so much of our heart and soul into it, I think. It's for me anyway.
How intensely aware were you of Haida heritage and culture?
Oh, it was always there. My dad had a dance group right from when I was about, 5 or 6. So I've always had that around me.
Now, do you just carve poles?
No, this is my first ones.
Really?
Yeah.
Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, that's good.
Oh, I've carved a lot with my dad and my uncle, but I've never done one on my own.
You got one of your old masks there? Here, show me this. Do you mind?
You want me to?
Yeah, show them to me.
That's
What's
my
that?
very first one.
The very first mask you ever carved? How old were you?
Probably about 16, 17.
Wow, it's got hair.
It's my sister's actual hair.
It's your sister's hair?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's her mask also.
Okay, you know the acquisitive Raven in me just has to take flight at some point. It's time to go shopping.
I'm in a place called Tallel, the Crystal Cabin.
Hi, Valerie.
Hello,
Nice to
Laura
meet you. Laura,
Dutay is jeweler and owner of this fabulous gift shop that has so many wonderful works of art. Wow, look at this one.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
That's a beautiful weaving,
yeah,
isn't it?
Beautiful cedar woven.
Classic Haida hat. How much?
Around $800,
$800.
which is a good price for hand woven cedar hat.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Look at the weaving, it's so fine though. It's a magnificent piece of art. Now the jewelry I love.
Yeah, I know.
I grabbed myself a pair of earrings early on.
Good for
but
you. That's the
these,
thing to do when you come here is adorn yourself with beautiful Haida jewelry. And it's all hand carved.
That's just magnificent. So what's that?
That's an eagle.
An eagle.
Yeah, 14 karat gold.
Wow, look at the mother of pearl. Oh, the
This is a
detail
mammoth
on it.
ivory inlay and shell inlay.
How much?
Around 40,000 for that piece.
Wow.
There's not too many carvers carving large pieces anymore, so it's quite significant for that.
Just magnificent works
It
of
is.
art.
You're right. Thank you.
A raven and an eagle. I'm gonna join both clans. Oh, salmon is great.
After a day of shopping for shiny objects, this feast at Joyce Bennett's house suits me just perfectly. That's another thing I love about the Haida. It's a cultural tradition to share and show off your worldly assets at a social event like a potlatch feast.
Bit of a pig with the salmon.
You could have as
I love smoked salmon. This looks so unbelievable.
you could
Hold
have
on.
as much as you want.
Well, don't say that to me because I am making a bit of a pig of myself. I'm hiding it under my vegetables.
That's what we did. We made it for you to eat and enjoy. This is
so
only
delicious.
It's only part of the different kinds of food that we eat because we eat clams and mussels and
Octopus?
octopus. There wasn't enough.
I'm not exactly heartbroken that you didn't have the octopus today, okay?
You would have liked the way I cook it.
You may recall from your high school history class that the native potlatch was banned by the federal government for decades. Today's feast is one of the many traditions the Haida people are re-embracing.
People are really taking an interest in their traditions and stuff now.
So that
So I
I
have.
can look at the tattoo. It's down there. I'll show it to you later, but it's fabulous.
You want me to stand on the
Oh,
chair?
honey.
I'll stand on the chair.
That's a thing of beauty.
Oh, it took.
Sorry, it was too hard to persuade her. Well, I'm sorry I get on my chair, but I have nothing to show you. But that was a thing of beauty, Joyce.
There was one final tradition to experience. This is a brand new longhouse being built in Old Masset called Clú Haida Gwaii, the Canoe People's House. And Christian White, who's an artist, has invited us to come and watch because there's going to be a dance.
Many of these songs have been passed down. They're songs that were remembered by our elders, and they were taught to us as we grew up.
Creative inspiration is everywhere in Haida Gwaii. Take this mountain, for example. Can you see the profile of the woman they call the Sleeping Princess? Sometimes it's hard to know where the land ends and the art begins in Haida Gwaii.
Pretty ancient. I found pictures of
As
her.
president of the Haida Nation, Gujal will have to strike a balance between preserving this heritage and sharing it with visitors. What do you think about the future of Haida Gwaii? What do you see? Do you see tourism and ecotourism as part of the future for Haida Gwaii?
Well, you know, I mean, we've seen tourism around other parts of the world where the people of the region are kind of missed out and big money comes in from outside.
I can't see a Club Med here, Gujal.
Yeah, I don't see a Club Med, but, you know, tourism has its dangers at the same time.
Everybody wants the islands, eh?
Yeah, there's so much here that, you know, I guess it's only fair that it will be shared. I mean, this world's filling up with people.
But you just got your piece of heaven here.
Yeah, and we got to look after it.
Back at Skungwai, the old totem poles are disappearing, coming to the end of their days. But I've learned something very fundamental here about the rhythm of life. These poles are all disintegrating. I mean, it's dramatic, but soon it will all be gone.
It will be, and I don't find that a sad thing personally, and I know some of our visitors do because they make a connection and they don't want it to go. But the reason it's not a sad thing is because they've done their job. We've honored them when we took them down, thanked them for the role that they were going to play, and now it's time for them to go back to where they came from. It's just so natural. Now they're nurse logs, and another beautiful tree is going to grow out of it. It's as it should be.
So the poles are part of the cycle of life.
Exactly. The poles, the cedar trees, just like the Haida Nation, we're all intertwined. We are bound together and we can't separate ourselves.
But one day, Skungwai will be completely overgrown. You wouldn't know anything was here.
One day, but we'll know. We'll always know. Our Haida memory will be forever.
Oh, I love these islands so much. I love this water out there. And, you know, my daughter's 5 months old, and I think she's the luckiest girl in the world to be born here, to be born Haida, to grow up in a time where really good change is taking place, you know? And we're only going to get stronger. And we're only going to maintain these islands and keep them beautiful and keep them providing for us, hey? Yeah.
This is paradise, and you must see it sometime if you can. Watching the sunrise on the poles at Gwaii, an instance, was unforgettable in this Haida homeland, these shining islands. Emily Carr, who painted here, wrote that it is wonderful to feel the grandness of Canada in the raw. Not because she is Canada, she wrote, but because she is something sublime that you were born into, some great rugged power that you are part of. Amen.
Hi, can I help you?
Thank you. I just got to get my bag up
That's
here.
all
It's
perfect.
really heavy. Oh, God.
What do you have in here?
I got some carvings in Haida Gwaii. They were so beautiful.
And rocks, maybe?
Yes, I took some rocks because they were just souvenirs. It was such a wonderful trip.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah. How did you get past security with all that?
I'll just sit down now.
Do you want me to help you put this away?
Oh, thank you.
More rocks?
Yes.